Hi, it's Katrina! From isolated places with dark histories to places with unexplained flashes of light, here are 9 islands that hide a secret. Number 9. Mystery Island. To the locals of Vanuatu, the small uninhabited island is called Inyug. To the rest of us, it is just known as Mystery Island. Most of the 0.6 square mile island's area is occupied by a grassy landing strip, which is used twice weekly as an airport for the nearby island of Aneityum. According to locals, this seemingly uneventful island is haunted at night by their ancestors, and people are reluctant to go there after dark because bad things will happen. During the 19th century, the widespread fear of this supernatural made Mystery Island a safe place for Europeans, who believed the indigenous people of the adjacent mainland were violent cannibals, so they preferred to hang out here. The indigenous people were not, in fact, vicious cannibals. Research shows that they enjoyed a sophisticated and high-quality lifestyle before the Europeans came along. Unfortunately, however, their population was all but decimated by conquest and disease, and the only knowledge of their traditions was passed down verbally, as there are no written records of their history. Therefore, much of the past culture of the people of Vanuatu is just as much of a mystery as Mystery Island itself. The wildlife around Mystery Island is also in the process of still being discovered by scientists. Fun fact, Mystery Island was visited by Queen Elizabeth in 1974. While there, she enjoyed a private barbecue. Oddly, however, most locals do not remember the famed visit at all. Number 8. Palmyra Atoll. Palmyra Atoll has a pretty nasty reputation as a haunted island. You wouldn't think it if you were flying overhead. It actually looks like a classic island paradise in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. But for the past 200 years, a great many ships have crashed around its coastline. Technically, no one lives there, although there are a few people from the Nature Conservancy who are there a lot of the time. The island itself is the result of a large coral reef. However, because of this, it's led to a ton of shipwrecks over the years. It's rumored that one of them contained a large amount of treasure that no one has found to this day. Even worse, many people think that the island is haunted by the ghosts of those whose ships crashed onto its shores. So even if you might want to find buried treasure, it might be best to stay away. The US used to run a military airstrip off of the atoll around World War II, but it's not too attractive these days. It's only occasionally used for official purposes. In 1974, there was also a murder committed on the island, maybe even a double murder. This crime eventually became the subject of And the Sea Will Tell, a true crime book and a mini-series. It's safe to say that this island is hiding a lot of secrets. And now for number 7. But first, I want to give a big shout out to JXL Plays, who is a new subscriber, and Damian Toro. Thanks so much for your support. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe and join us before you go. Number 7. Battleship Island. During the 1950s, Gunkanjima, or Battleship Island, was the most densely populated place on the planet. However, that ended up being a pretty big problem. Battleship Island is aptly named because from the outside, it definitely looks like a battleship. It's a tiny concrete island off the shore of Nagasaki, and it is wrapped in concrete and jammed full of buildings. Officially, it was known as Hashima Island, but it has been totally abandoned ever since 1974. What happened on Battleship Island? The island was originally renovated by Mitsubishi to exploit the large coal mine beneath it. For a while, it was a successful mining town, and the coal operation on the island was able to deliver around 400,000 tons of coal to Japan every year by 1941. However, the working conditions were abysmal. The mine was underneath the seabed, which presented its own set of difficulties, and most of the workers were actually Korean prisoners forced into mining by the Japanese government, and forced laborers. There was much debate as to what actually went on here and its place in Japanese history, since many people died at this site. The buildings were gigantic, with some of the concrete towers extending 10 stories high. There were even playgrounds and schools and so on. It was only about 16 acres large, but in the 1950s, its population was nearly 6,000. Once the coal supply had been depleted, everyone departed, leaving the concrete jungle to the sea's elements. It's a strange human monument smack dab in the middle of nowhere. In 2015, it was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Historical Site, but the majority of the island remains off-limits to visitors. Number 6. Land of No Return Island. Many people around the Barsa Kelmes Island think that it might be a doorway to another realm. It's literally embedded into the name itself. Barsa Kelmis is Kazakh for the place of no return. With a name like that, it's gotta have a creepy history behind it. It's the biggest island inside of the Aral Sea, which is bordered by Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. People from Kazakhstan have constructed entire narratives around the nature of the island. These stories depict whole families disappearing from the island at once without any indication of where they went. There are also stories of visitors going to the island for a year or so, and then once they return home, they find that decades have passed, as if they were lost in the land of the fairies. Many such stories have to do with strange aberrations related to time, and because of that, the place of no return seems to have garnered a reputation as a hotspot for possible alien activity. As it turns out, these stories were most likely that, just stories and legends told by people in Kazakhstan and released to audiences in the Soviet Union to drum up intrigue about the location. A few comrades in the USSR were sharing juicy paranormal stories, and Sergei Lukyanenko opted to really shock his friends. Then all of them concocted a bunch of fake evidence to make it seem like it was a real thing, and they published an article about it based on one story from an old newspaper. In actual fact, their original source was just a prank. That's why you should always check at least 3 sources. Number 5. Santa Cruz Island. In 1957, when Dr. Cary Stanton moved to a family home on Santa Cruz Island to live out his preferred best life as a bachelor. However, Dr. Stanton might have had a secret or two up his sleeve. He was well known as an odd button. He maintained a strict routine and demanded that all of his visitors do the same. Day and night, he would do the same things with precision. Dinner at 7:30, cookies at 8:30, and bed at 9, with the same courses each week. And it appears that he continued doing so until the day he died, December 8, 1987. I'm up for the cookies at 8:30 thing, but bedtime is more like 2 a.m. His family had a tiny church and cemetery on the island, and Dr. Stanton was buried there. His will stated that he wanted his ranch to belong to the local Nature Conservancy. However, when officials from this institution looked around the property, they were shocked to discover a box that contained human remains that were effectively ashes. They don't know who this person was exactly, but they do think that it was an older woman, based on the teeth and clothes buckle from the 40s and a ring that dated back prior to World War II that they found. But who was this person? No one really thinks that Stanton did it, but it is definitely mysterious. Why was this box on the ranch in the first place, and what did Stanton know about it? We may never get the answers for sure, but it's a strange occurrence. Do you have any theories about the case? Let me know in the comments below. Number 4. Por Bazin Island. Por Bazin is an archaeological site on a small island inside of the Terekol Lake, which is located in Tuva, a part of Russia. While it's out there in the open for everybody to see, its exact purpose remains unknown to this day. It wasn't discovered until 1891, and explorers at the time thought that Por Bazin was a fort. Based on dating techniques, archaeologists have determined that this site was built at some point in the 8th century AD. However, even though they know that it must have been built around then, they have yet to uncover substantive evidence of human occupation. But how could a fort this elaborate, so clearly built with human intent, yield no indication of human life? Maybe it was a military fort, some say, but then why is it in the middle of a lake? Maybe it was a religious site, but up until recently, no one really had a clue. Some scientists think they have finally solved the mystery. Based on wood they found on Por Bazin, they determined that the site was made in 777 AD by Tengri Bogu Khan as a temple complex for the Manichaeism religion, which is a religion with an intricate cosmology detailing the battle between light and darkness. Have any of you heard of this before? However, 2 years later, Khan was murdered by his people who didn't want his religion. It could just be that it was incomplete before he was overthrown. It sounds like a tempting theory, but perhaps there's something else going on this island. Number 3. Tenerife. The Canary Islands are a chain of islands belonging to Spain, and Tenerife is the biggest of them all. It's pretty heavily populated as well, boasting over 900,000 residents. Before the Europeans arrived, the Guanches lived on the Canary Islands. A number of their mummies were found in the Barranco de Badajoz, a ravine that's turned into an archaeological site. These mummies have helped contemporary archaeologists understand a great deal about this ancient culture. However, the Barranco de Badajoz is also rumored to be incredibly haunted. Sometimes tourists claim that their watches stop working when they enter the ravine. Others claim to have spotted towers with light, but the most astounding story concerns a girl who once toured the ravine, never to be seen again. It is said that she went inside of the archaeological site to find fruit, but then vanished into thin air. People searched far and wide, but it was as if she'd never existed. However, things changed 20 years later. Just as quickly as she had disappeared, she popped back up. Even crazier, she hadn't aged at all and claimed to have only gone off for a couple of hours. She couldn't believe so much time had passed. Of course, who knows if these legends are true, but they definitely make this site of Tenerife a pretty creepy place to be. Number 2. Daksha. Daksha is a tiny island inside of the Adriatic Sea off the coast of Dubrovnik, Croatia. It's been relatively uninhabited for an unclear amount of time. However, it has a pretty dark history. In 1281, the Franciscans, a religious sect within the Catholic Church, set up a monastery on the island known as the Franciscan Monastery of Saint Sabina. This monastery lasted deep into the 1880s. Other than that, there's only an old lighthouse on its landscape. However, in 1944, Daksha took on a darker hue. During World War II, the Yugoslav partisans were a group of communists who resisted the Axis powers. They were led by the Community Party in Yugoslavia. They were considered a potent force, maybe too potent. During the peak of the war, the partisans went to Dubrovnik and captured a 53-member group of Nazi sympathizers, among whom were Dubrovnik's mayor as well as the regional priest. They took this group to Daksha and executed them all. This is now known as the Daksha Massacre. It wasn't until 2009 when researchers uncovered a couple of mass graves that contained victims of the tragedy, although they still haven't found them all. Daksha is actually available to buy if you've got the cash to spend. Hey, but rumor has it that the place is pretty haunted, so I personally don't recommend owning it. Not sure if you'll be able to enjoy it or get your investment back. Would you go to Daksha? Let me know in the comments below. Number 1. Bouvet Island. Bouvet Island is the most isolated, remote place in the world. It's in the middle of the southern Atlantic Ocean, and it's surrounded by over 3.1 million square miles of empty ocean, which is just a tad smaller than all of Europe. But in spite of its complete and utter isolation, Bouvet Island has a rich and mysterious history. It was discovered in 1739 and then left alone for another 60 years when another series of expeditions began. In the 1930s, this island came under Norwegian control. When people investigated the island, they discovered that it was mostly made out of a glacier. Only about 7% of its surface is not made up of the glacier, and the center of the island is actually an ice-stuffed volcano. In 1964, explorers discovered a ship that had been left by the coast. Had someone else been to Bouvet that we didn't know about? These explorers searched far and wide for evidence of human activity, but found nothing. This mystery remains unsolved. In 1979, a group of satellites detected 2 gigantic flashes of light around the region where Bouvet is located, between the Prince Edward Islands and Bouvetoya. This came to be known as the Vela incident. No one is quite sure where these flashes of light came from, or what they were. Some say they were nuclear tests, or meteors, or what have you. Perhaps it was only a glitch. But could something have been going on Bouvet? We may never know. Thanks for watching! Which island do you think is the most mysterious? Let me know why you think so in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up for more videos like these. See you soon! Bye!